Welcome to this Roll for Crit preview. Today we're going to enter the arena in Mutants the card game. In this game you are Psi Captains, and you are going to try to breed mutants using gene therapy and other crazy sci-fi mad scientist processes in order to create stronger monsters to defeat your opponents. This is a game from Lucky Duck Games, and yes, it is based on an app. We'll go a little bit more later on that, but let's focus on this game in front of us right now.
This is a deck building game where you begin with a small deck and a small starting hand of the same starting cards each time. You have 2 copies of each starter card within your deck of different classes. For example, the warrior, the beast, the zombie, the demon, the alien, and the robot. Those are them. And as you progress through the game, you're going to be able to upgrade, and you can see some of those up here. The way it actually works on your turn is that you'll have 3 different options. What are those options, Will?
So you can either play what's already in your hand, you can either breed one of the mutants that are in front of you, or incubate one. To breed them, you actually have to match their symbols. So they all come in those 6 flavors we mentioned before.
Yeah, and these symbols up here in the top correspond to the symbols over here in the top right.
For example, this Nebulon needs 1 space, so 1 alien if you use the basic card, and 1 mystic or 1 demon. You can use advanced ones, so if you had another Nebulon in your hand, you can contribute one of those symbols with them. But some maybe require 2 of the same symbols, so they're a bit more intensive. So that's one way, and they'll go straight onto the field if you do it that way. However, if you don't have the matching symbols, you can actually discard 1 card of any type to incubate it. You can only have 1 per turn. At the end of each round, it goes on top of your deck, so you'll get to draw it next round.
At the end of each of your turns, when you have your mutants on the field, if there's one in the active space, it's going to have to move to either the left or right zone. If those are already full, then you're going to have to move one of those out of the field. When that happens, they each actually have a special leave ability that triggers at that time. So a lot of the game is deciding which of those abilities is best for which moment, and kind of setting up combos of having mutants in certain spots, or maybe leaving one out for a while because it has an ongoing effect that you want to keep occurring as the game goes on.
Yeah, each mutant pretty much almost always has a enter the field and then exit the field, though they have some other things. So some RFG get a reward for being defensive against attacks, and obviously if there's a defense, there's also an attack ability as well.
Right.
And you also mentioned like constant, which would be a good way to set up some combos as well, which means you keep them on the field. But how do you win the game?
Good question.
Well, the way the game works is each round you're fighting here, and whoever's highest at the end is the one who wins the round and gets points. So that's one of the big ways. But the other thing is freezing your mutants. They're pretty much removing them from the game in a secret victory pile. And at the end of the game, you're going to get victory points. Some of them are pretty basic. They say up in the corners like a 4 or 3. Or some, like this one, actually gets a victory point for every time the death symbol appears on your freeze pile. So maybe you want to stack those symbols over there.
Yeah, so there's really 2 primary forms of points. Like you said, it's your victory pile that you're collecting and harboring as the game goes on, and then this track. So you also want to keep that in mind and be doing well from round to round. So I found that really cool because while this can be very showy and exciting as to who gets points each round, your victory pile is hidden. So you might be losing over here, but maybe you're building up some really good points over here. So there's a little bit of that going on.
But to make it so someone doesn't focus one way or the other completely fully, if you focus only on freezing, not caring about this, if everyone goes into these last 3 spots, you dominated the competition, and you get a whole lot more points, and they get nothing.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. That's a lot of the effects of the cards are moving people up and down this track, which can have a lot of different effects. And that is essentially the way the game plays. You go through a certain number of rounds, and then you just count up all those points. It's a deck building game, but I really do think with this whole setup over here and the way that the points are calculated on this track, it feels very different. It's also pretty streamlined compared to a lot of deck building games because you don't have a very large deck, and your pool of new cards is not super large either.
You will actually have a constructed possible deck beforehand. Now, right now, we actually set up because they have suggested ones. So some basic ones, so you can right off the box, just take those and play. But they have some more advanced cards you can use and other cards, and you can actually do a drafting system.
Yeah.
So you can sort of draft if you want to get more of an attack, sort of heavy upgrades, or maybe more of the symbol for freezing for points.
Yeah, and they have some of those advanced cards have even more advanced abilities. Like there's a transform ability that lets you put a mutant, I don't want to get that wrong, a mutant down and then actually kind of replace it with a different mutant. It transforms into something else and has a powerful effect that occurs. So there's some really neat, cool ideas in those.
Now, going back, this was based off an app, and the app itself is definitely one of those games when the way it works in the app is you will take like your warrior and robot, and you sort of fuse it, and you could pay money to make it take longer, but you should like take some time for it to come through, and you might get like a rare one or get a common one that is also a warrior robot type. So that's where that comes from, and that's where a lot of this art comes from, and it's sort of nice not to have to put in money constantly to see these creatures come out.
Yeah, all you got to do is wait around to incubate one of these babies.
And it is nice to see all the art, and definitely if this does grow bigger, I did notice a lot of them were definitely one of those things like, I recognize that from some other copyrighted like very close, similar, but not exact.
Yeah. You'll see a lot of kind of the classic, like the alien looks like a gray. You'll see some of those homages in there for sure. It's. I think this definitely has room to grow and for them to add new mutants, especially with the drafting mechanic, being able to get pre-build some of those decks and decide what you like, form your own teams at home. There's a lot of potential for that there. I thought this was really fun, pretty fun game.
Yeah, I'd love to see how it continues to grow if they choose to. And I love the basic deck system because everyone pretty much starts the same thing, but then you can have a lot of fun. And I didn't think their pre-made decks were too bad. I thought they are all pretty balanced and were fun to mess around with.
Yeah, definitely. A good time right out of the box, whether or not they expand or you expand Mutants. It is available on Kickstarter right now from Lucky Duck Games. So check it out. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was Roll for Crit.
Hey, if you like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and like this video for more excellent board game content.
Heck yeah!